In 1989, California built a prison so dangerous that even hardened criminals fear being sent there. Pelican Bay State Prison, located on California's remote northern coast. This facility houses one specific unit that strikes terror into the hearts of gang leaders across America. The Security Housing Unit, where inmates spend 23 hours a day, locked in windowless concrete cells, cut off from human contact. But 5 men stand out among the thousands who have walked these halls. 5 individuals whose names are whispered with fear and respect throughout California's criminal networks. Tonight, we're examining their stories. Real events, documented crimes, the psychology behind their actions. These aren't ordinary criminals. One built an empire from behind bars. Another survived a death contract that should have been impossible to escape. A third committed the ultimate betrayal that sent shockwaves through organized crime. And the man at number 1? His transformation defies everything we think we know about human nature. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these 5 men represent the most feared names in California's criminal underworld. Their stories reveal how America's gang system creates both monsters and, occasionally, miracles. Before we begin, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments right now. Are you in Los Angeles where these stories unfolded? Maybe you're watching from another state wondering how gangs operate. Or perhaps you're international, trying to understand America's prison system from the outside. Let me know where you are and if you've ever heard these names before tonight. Now, let's examine the place that contains them. To understand these men, you first need to understand where they're housed. Pelican Bay State Prison was designed with one purpose: to break the most dangerous criminals in America. When California's prisons became overrun with gang violence in the 1980s, officials realized they needed something different, something more extreme. They built Pelican Bay. The Security Housing Unit, or SHU, represents the most isolated form of incarceration in the United States. Concrete cells measuring 8 by 10 feet, no windows, no human contact, meals delivered through slots, exercise alone in concrete yards surrounded by 30-foot walls, 23 hours a day, every day, for years, sometimes decades. The men we're about to meet didn't end up here by accident. Each one earned their place through violence that shocked even hardened prison officials. Gang leadership, murder, betrayal, random killing that defied explanation. But Pelican Bay serves another purpose. By removing these individuals from general population, the prison disrupts gang operations across California. When a Mexican Mafia leader disappears into the SHU, drug operations halt. When a Crip shot caller vanishes, street violence changes overnight. These 5 men, their presence or absence, shapes gang politics throughout the state. Their decisions behind these walls affect thousands of criminals on the streets. That's the power they wield, even in isolation. At number 5, we begin with the man whose crimes defy explanation, Mark William Cunningham, born January 27, 1960. A name that means nothing to most people, but everything to the families he destroyed. Between April and June of 1983, Cunningham murdered 3 men in California. But these weren't gang hits. They weren't robberies gone wrong. They weren't crimes of passion. They were completely random. His first victim, Mark Cameron Farrell, 20 years old, an electronics worker driving home near Santa Cruz. Cunningham shot him multiple times with an Old West-style .38 caliber revolver, then set his car on fire. The flames were meant to destroy evidence, but they didn't. 6 weeks later, Han Mao Lee and Chen Qianying. Both are disturbing. Isn't just the murders, it's the complete absence of motive. Gang members kill for territory. Robbers kill for money. Cunningham killed because nobody knows why. For 2 years, police had ballistics evidence, but no suspect. Then Cunningham made a mistake. He bragged to the wrong person. His ex-girlfriend, Lynn Bonin, came forward. She'd been with him the day of the Laguna Beach murders. She knew. February 1988. Convicted of 3 counts of murder, life without parole. Today, Cunningham sits in his concrete cell at Pelican Bay. 64 years old. No visitors, no letters, no explanation for why 3 innocent men had to die. But random killing pales compared to organized violence. Number 4 takes us to April 29, 1992. Los Angeles is burning. The Rodney King verdict has just been announced. 4 police officers acquitted. The city erupts. But in the chaos, one man makes a decision that will haunt him forever. Damen Williams, nicknamed Football for his high school athletic career. A gang member who thought the riots gave him freedom to do anything. He was wrong. As fires rage across South Central, Williams and his crew target Hispanic drivers. They drag them from their cars, beat them, rob them, spray paint gang graffiti on their vehicles, all captured on camera, all witnessed by dozens. Williams doesn't realize it yet, but he's just signed his own death warrant. The Mexican Mafia, La MA, controls Hispanic gang activity throughout California. They have strict codes, specific rules about who can be touched, when, and why. Williams has violated every single one. Within weeks of the riots, the word goes out. Damen Williams is marked for death. But here's where it gets interesting. The Mexican Mafia doesn't handle this contract themselves. They subcontract it to Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13, a Salvadoran gang desperate to prove themselves to La MA. For MS-13 members, killing Williams represents instant respect. Full gang membership. A fast track to the top. The contract creates a target so valuable that multiple crews compete for the kill. Williams knows he's marked. He knows every day could be his last. Prison becomes a battlefield where he must watch every shadow, trust no one, sleep with one eye open. And yet, somehow, he survives. Years pass. The contract remains active. Williams moves through the system, from county jail to state prison to Pelican Bay's SHU. Each transfer brings new threats, new attempts on his life. His survival reveals something profound about prison politics. Sometimes, staying alive isn't about strength or connections. Sometimes it's about becoming so hot, so dangerous to approach, that even your enemies keep their distance. Williams broke the rules, but our next man helped write them. Number 3. The man who committed the ultimate betrayal. Renee Enriquez. Born 1962 in Artesia, California. Middle-class family, Mexican immigrant parents. A childhood that should have led anywhere, except where it did. At 12 years old, Enriquez joins Artesia 13. His older brother gives him the nickname Boxer. What starts as neighborhood loyalty becomes something much more dangerous. By his teens, Enriquez is dealing PCP and LSD. Armed robbery, property damage. Each crime builds his reputation and catches the attention of older inmates. When he hits the dual vocational institution as a teenager, Enriquez meets the Mexican Mafia. La MA, the most powerful prison gang in California. They see potential in this young man from Artesia. Enriquez proves himself the only way La MA respects, through violence. He stabs rival gang members. Murders a Vagos motorcycle club inmate, nicknamed Chainsaw. Blood earns respect. Respect earns advancement. 1985. Enriquez becomes a colonel, a brother, officially made in the Mexican Mafia. But he doesn't stop there. After parole in 1989, Enriquez takes control of street operations. He collects taxes from drug dealers, orders executions, personally carries out murders to maintain discipline. He kills Cynthia Gavaldon, a woman suspected of withholding money. He murders fellow Colonel David Gallegos for questioning his authority. In 1991, Enriquez orchestrates an assassination attempt on Mexican Mafia leader Salvador Mon Buenrostro. 30 stab wounds. Buenrostro survives. Barely. Transferred to Pelican Bay's SHU in 1993, Enriquez continues running operations from solitary confinement, 23 hours a day in a concrete cell, but his influence reaches across California. Then, something changes. 2003. Renee Enriquez makes a decision that shocks the criminal underworld. The highest-ranking Mexican Mafia member in history defects. He becomes a government witness. For 20 years, Enriquez had been the enforcer, the killer, the strategist who helped transform La Ime from a prison gang into a criminal empire. He knew every secret, every operation, every weakness. Now he's telling everything to federal agents. His testimony leads to dozens of convictions. Mexican Mafia leaders who thought they were untouchable, sentenced to life. Operations that took decades to build, destroyed overnight. Today, Enriquez lives in witness protection, new identity, constant security. The price of betraying La Ime is death, and that contract never expires. But why did he flip? Was it conscience? Fear? A calculated move for survival? Even now, after 20 years of cooperation, nobody knows for certain. What we do know is this: Enriquez broke the most sacred rule in organized crime, the code of silence. Enriquez broke the code of silence, but he learned it from a master. Number 2. The man who built an empire from behind bars, Joe Morgan. Born 1929 to Croatian immigrant parents in San Pedro, California. A white kid in a Hispanic gang world. An outsider who became the ultimate insider. As a child, Morgan moves to East Los Angeles. He joins the Ford Maravilla gang, the only white member in a Mexican-American street crew. But Morgan has something that transcends race: intelligence, ruthlessness, and an absolute refusal to back down. At 16, Morgan commits his first murder. He beats his girlfriend's husband to death with a tire iron. Buries the body in a shallow grave. Gets caught. Gets convicted. 9 years at San Quentin. 17 years old, surrounded by hardened criminals. Most kids would break. Morgan thrives. He cultivates respect through intellect and violence. Learns the Aztec language to communicate secretly. Studies prison politics like a chess master. When he's paroled in 1955, he immediately robs a West Covina bank. $17,000. Freedom doesn't interest him. Power does. His recapture changes everything. During the arrest, police shatter his leg with gunshots. The limb is amputated below the knee. Joe Morgan becomes Peg-Leg Morgan, and the legend begins. That prosthetic leg becomes his trademark. He conceals lockpicks and hacksaws inside it. In 1961, Morgan orchestrates the escape of 11 inmates from Los Angeles County Jail. They break out through a pipe shaft, using tools hidden in his artificial limb. But Morgan's true genius isn't in escaping, it's in building. The Mexican Mafia exists when Morgan arrives in prison, but it's disorganized. A collection of violent young men with no strategy. Morgan changes that. He transforms La Ime from a gang into a criminal syndicate. Morgan negotiates alliances across racial lines: Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, even elements of the Los Angeles crime family. He creates a network that controls drug trafficking throughout California. Most remarkably, Morgan does this as a white man leading a Hispanic organization. His race should have been a barrier. Instead, it becomes an asset. Morgan can negotiate with groups that wouldn't talk to Hispanic leaders. By the 1970s, Morgan's influence extends from prison cells to street corners. He orders the Mexican Mafia's first street execution in Los Angeles in 1971. The message is clear. La Ime's reach has no boundaries. Morgan spends decades in solitary confinement at Pelican Bay. 23 hours a day in a concrete cell. No windows, minimal human contact. But his reputation grows larger in isolation. 1993. Morgan dies of liver cancer in his cell. His death creates a power vacuum that triggers violent struggles for control across California's gang system. But Morgan's influence doesn't end with his death. In 1992, a film called American Me depicts the Mexican Mafia's history. Morgan and other gang members are furious about the portrayal. The film's consultants face retaliation. Some are murdered. Even from the grave, Morgan's legacy shapes gang politics. Today, corrections officials consider Morgan the single most influential gang leader in California history. A Croatian immigrant who became the architect of Hispanic organized crime. Morgan built the system, but one man embodied its contradictions. Number 1. The man who transformed from monster to prophet. Cody DeJohn Scott, born November 13, 1963, in South Central Los Angeles. Raised by a single mother, father absent. A child surrounded by poverty, violence, and broken dreams. At 11 years old, Cody joins the 8-trade gangster Crips. Not as a wannabe or a hanger-on, as a soldier. At 13, Cody earns a nickname that will define him for decades. During a robbery, 2008, Shakur publishes his second book, Thuglife. Fiction this time, but still exploring the same themes. Violence, redemption, the possibility of change. Released in 2012, Shakur tries to rebuild his life again, tries to be an advocate for change rather than an agent of destruction. June 6, 2021, Sanyika Shakur dies in Oceanside, California. Natural causes. He's 57 years old. With his death, an era ends. Shakur represents something unique in American criminal history. A man who experienced the absolute worst of our gang system, but also proved that redemption is possible. Monster Cody showed us what America's streets can create when we abandon our children. Sanyika Shakur showed us what those same children can become when given knowledge, purpose, and hope. That's why he's number 1. Not because his crimes were the worst, but because his transformation was the most complete. In a system designed to break men, Shakur rebuilt himself from the ground up. He proved that no one is beyond saving. No one is beyond change. That's the most dangerous idea of all. 5 men. 5 different paths to the same destination. Cunningham. The random killer whose motives we'll never understand. A man who destroyed 3 families for reasons that died with him in his concrete cell. His crimes remind us that sometimes evil has no explanation, no pattern, no meaning beyond the pain it leaves behind. Williams, the riot participant who broke codes he didn't know existed. A young man caught up in chaos, making decisions in moments that would define the rest of his life. His story shows how quickly violence can spiral beyond control, how one night of rage can create enemies that last forever. Enriquez, the enforcer who chose betrayal over loyalty, 20 years of murder and mayhem, building an empire of fear, then destroying it all with his testimony. His defection proves that even the most hardened criminals can reach a breaking point where survival matters more than reputation. Morgan, the architect who built an empire from nothing, a Croatian immigrant who transcended race, religion, and background to become the most feared gang leader in California history. His legacy shows how intelligence and ruthlessness can create power that survives death itself. Shakur, the monster who became a prophet, from child soldier to intellectual, from Monster Cody to Sanyika Shakur. His transformation represents the most dangerous possibility of all, that redemption is real, that change is possible, that no one is beyond saving. What do they tell us about America? These men represent more than criminals. They represent failures. Failures of families who couldn't protect their children. Failures of schools that couldn't educate them. Failures of communities that couldn't guide them. Failures of a system that created monsters instead of citizens. But they also represent possibilities. The possibility that even our worst mistakes can lead to wisdom. The possibility that our harshest punishments can create unexpected transformations. The possibility that stories of evil can somehow point us toward good. These men represent the extremes of our criminal justice system, the worst crimes we can imagine, and occasionally, the possibility of redemption we desperately need to believe in. Pelican Bay was built to contain men like this, to remove them from society, from influence, from the ability to cause more harm. In many ways it succeeds. When Morgan disappeared into solitary confinement, Mexican Mafia operations across California lost their strategic mastermind. When Shakur was locked away, Crip violence in South Central shifted dramatically. When Enriquez vanished into witness protection, Damen's street operations suffered massive disruption. Gang operations are disrupted when leaders disappear into solitary confinement. Drug territories change hands overnight. Young gang members lose their mentors and role models. The violence that once seemed organized becomes chaotic, desperate, unfocused. But isolation also creates legends. And legends can be more dangerous than living men. Men like Morgan and Shakur become more powerful in death than they ever were in life. Their stories spread through county jails like gospel. Their names are whispered with reverence in prison yards across America. Young criminals study their methods, adopt their philosophies, try to follow in their footsteps. Morgan's strategic thinking influences gang operations he never personally directed. Shakur's writings inspire both criminals and reformers, showing different groups completely opposite lessons from the same life. Enriquez's testimony continues to reshape law enforcement understanding of gang operations years after his defection. Their influence grows even as their bodies age and decay in concrete cells. The cycle continues. It always continues. New gang members hear these names whispered in county jails during their first arrests. They learn the stories during long nights in holding cells. They absorb the lessons while waiting for bail hearings that may never come. New leaders emerge to fill the vacuum left by imprisoned legends. Younger, hungrier, more desperate to prove themselves worthy of the names they've inherited. They study the successes and failures of those who came before, determined to do better, to be smarter, to avoid the mistakes that led to Pelican Bay. New violence erupts over old territories as power structures shift and adapt. Wars that began in the 1970s continue with soldiers who weren't even born when the original battles started. Grudges pass from father to son, from older brother to younger cousin, from cellmate to cellmate. The human cost is staggering, beyond measurement, beyond comprehension. Thousands of lives lost in gang violence that can be traced directly to decisions made by men now locked in solitary confinement. Families destroyed by cycles of retaliation that span decades. Children growing up without fathers, mothers burying sons, communities trapped in patterns of violence that seem impossible to break. The cost extends beyond the obvious victims. Police officers traumatized by scenes they can't forget. Emergency room doctors treating wounds they know will lead to more wounds. Teachers watching promising students disappear into systems that rarely return them intact. Communities trapped in cycles of violence that span generations. Neighborhoods where 3 generations of the same family have done time at Pelican Bay. Streets where the children of murder victims become murderers themselves, where the sons of drug dealers become the next generation of kingpins. Yet Shakur's transformation reminds us that change is possible. Even in the harshest environment America can create, even surrounded by men who have committed unspeakable acts, even locked in concrete cells designed to break the human spirit, growth can happen. Learning can occur. Redemption can begin. That even in our harshest prisons, even among our most violent offenders, the capacity for growth exists. The ability to recognize mistakes, to feel genuine remorse, to dedicate remaining years to preventing others from following the same destructive path. If Sanyika Shakur could transform from Monster Cody into a voice for change, what does that say about human potential? If a man who earned his nickname through savage violence could become an author whose words inspire peace, what possibilities exist for others? The question isn't whether these men deserved their fate. That judgment has already been made by courts, juries, and the concrete walls that contain them. The question is what their stories teach us about preventing the next generation from following the same path. How do we break cycles that have persisted for decades? How do we reach children before they become soldiers in wars they didn't start? How do we create alternatives to systems that produce both monsters and legends? The answers aren't simple. They require looking at root causes that politicians prefer to ignore. Poverty that pushes children toward illegal income, educational failures that leave young minds susceptible to gang recruitment, family breakdown that creates voids filled by criminal mentors, social neglect that abandons entire communities to their own devices. But the answers exist. Programs that intervene before children reach the point of no return. Education initiatives that provide real alternatives to street life. Community organizations that offer structure and purpose without violence. Former gang members who use their experiences to guide others away from the same mistakes. That's a conversation worth having. A conversation that honors the victims while acknowledging the humanity of the perpetrators. A conversation that doesn't excuse evil, but tries to understand how evil develops. A conversation that looks honestly at what creates men like these, and what might prevent their creation in the future. These stories force us to confront uncomfortable truths about American society, about systems that fail children so completely that prison becomes their only destination, about communities so broken that gangs provide the only family structure many young people ever know, about a justice system that excels at punishment but struggles with prevention. If this investigation changed how you think about gang culture and prison reform, let me know in the comments below. Share your thoughts on what creates cycles of violence and what might break them. Tell me about your own community's struggles with these issues. Subscribe for more deep examinations of America's criminal underworld. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss investigations into the systems and stories that shape our understanding of crime and punishment.